It's difficult. It's a difficult subject to preach about. It's a difficult concept to embrace. And quite frankly, this is going to feel like a very raw sermon because it is. It's very personal. I am not an expert in this area. I am only a student, just so you know. And I think if I might illustrate just how difficult prayer is, just by raising of hands, let me ask just you, if you can be honest with me, and if you could be transparent with everyone around you, how many of you know that you should pray? How many of you even know how to pray in some regards? And yet you would still say of yourself, when the rubber meets the road, you are not where you want to be in your prayer life. How many of you are there? Keep them up. Keep them up. Prayer is difficult. Prayer is difficult. Some of you, you're going to hate today's sermon. Not from a conviction standpoint, although I think sometimes great sermons, like they kind of bring that point where, oh man, I feel just inspired to be different. And so we ride the guilt wave only to maybe have it sustain for a month or two and only to fade out. To throw any guilt anywhere, I promise. That's not the goal. The reason you're going to hate the sermon is because we don't have a central passage. And we're not going to exegesis the passage, and we're not going to, pick apart the verse and look at the Greek. We're just going to be very real with the text. I mean, we could talk, there's all kinds of verses that we can look at with prayer. I'm going to list some of you who are type A and, type 1 people, and it drives you nuts to kind of be spaghetti-minded, okay? I'm going to list for you some of these passages that have just spoken to me on this subject in the past that I'm going to mention briefly in the sermon, but we're not going to open Scripture and dissect it. Okay, so Matthew 6 is a great reference point, Luke 11, Luke 18. You can actually read the whole Gospel of Luke. There's several times where Jesus just goes off by himself and he prays. One of my favorite passages is Romans chapter 8. Romans chapter 8, I think it's like verse 22 through 26. Let's just kind of turn there if you want. This probably is going to be the most exhaustive we do today. But I think it's probably a really beneficial verse to really kind of transition us from hope to this concept of prayer. Because of what it says, if you'll look at the context of Romans chapter 8 is that we're free in the Spirit, we're no longer under condemnation. It's a great passage if you've come from a legalistic standpoint, okay, or if you have that in your background. But where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. And then it talks about how we as children are invited into the presence of God because He desires to have us come sit in His lap, right? That's kind of the language of Romans 8. And then he says, but when you look at everything in the world, when you look at what you're going through today, it's not worth comparing what we will be in later. And I love that concept. Like, no matter what we're dealing with today, there is nothing that we deal with today that's worthy of consideration, worthy of compare, based on the eternal glory that we get to have in Christ Jesus later. Holy cow! Man, that pumps me up. That gets me so excited knowing it doesn't matter what I'm facing today. It doesn't matter because that's what I'm looking forward to. Right? So that's kind of the context of the good stuff. Woo. And if that's the context, what are we going to walk into? Look at verse 24. For in this hope, remember that's what we came off of with 1 Peter. For in this hope we were saved, Romans 8. But hope that is seen is no hope at all. Who hopes for what he already has? But if we hope for what we do not have, we wait patiently. And man, when we look at this world and it's full of just junk. How many of you are just stressed out? You're just anxious. You don't know which way to turn. I mean, I get there sometimes, right? I am kind of in that spot. Like I told the youth kids this last Sunday as we're walking through David, the best battles in our life are in the valley. That's where David fought Goliath. Most of our battles are not fought on the mountaintops. They're fought in the nit and gritty and the dirt and the muck and the mire of life. Right? And so, Paul is telling us, listen, we wait patiently for glory to reveal itself. We're not where we want to be. And then look at verse 26. This has shaped my prayer life. Many times this is my prayer. Do you see verse 26? I mean, this is a great one to memorize. In the same way, the Spirit helps us, intercedes for us. He brings for us prayers that we can't even utter because it's so hurtful, it's so painful. Man, here's my prayer. Oh, that hurts, God. Why am I going through this? That's the prayer. So that prayer shaped my life. That's a great one. Sometimes I'll just say, Spirit, I need you to pray for me here because I can't. I don't have the words. Another one that shaped my life. Ecclesiastes 5:1 and 2. It's a weird one. I mean, especially when you think about prayer, because it says, when you draw near to the house of the Lord, watch your steps, guard your steps, draw near. Let's see, how's it say it? Let me say it. Let me say it as I pray it. When you draw near to the house of the Lord, draw near to listen. That's it. Draw near to listen, rather than offer the sacrifice of fools who utter many things that they do not understand. That prayer has shaped my life. Man, that's a rich one. You know, sometimes when I'm before God, I don't say a word. I just shut up. Let His presence soak over me. Matthew 6, Luke 11. I very reference Luke 11, but Matthew 6 and Luke 11 are the same teaching. And Matthew 5, 6, and 7 is the Sermon on the Mount. It's when Jesus is, it's a collection of sermons. It's a collection of lessons. And commentators, they don't know whether Jesus was literally sitting on a hill and he had all these people coming down. He's like, does this big, long rhetoric, 5, 6, and 7. Or if this is like a collection of series or a collection of teachings that he's done over the 3 years. And maybe he did a combination of both. Maybe it is kind of like this one shot in the arm. I'm going to teach everybody, you know, this big, powerful lesson. And maybe it's a combination. Maybe it's kind of both and rather than either or. But in Luke chapter 11, it says one time when Jesus was coming back from a place that he had only gone to pray. Again, Luke's really rich with Jesus just praying by himself, right? It says the disciples said, hey, Jesus, can you teach us how to pray? And it's kind of the same sort of mirrored language in Matthew 6. And you kind of wonder, well, what's going on, Matthew? What's going on, James? Hey, Peter? Hey, you know, like Luke. Luke wasn't in the group. But, you know, like all these disciples, you're kind of going, well, why are you asking this question? Teach us how to pray. Do you guys not know how to? Didn't you guys do this at VBS, right? Didn't you like the table prayer? Don't you guys know how to pray? And I think what they really saw with Jesus was that it was more than just prayer. It was more than just like rhetoric. It was more than liturgy. It was more than just like routine and check mark. I think it was intimate. And I think that's what they were asking. And so Jesus kind of starts with this thing that we all know. It's called the Lord's Prayer, right? But you get different versions of it. It says, when you pray this way, our Lord or our Father. Now, Luke and Matthew's versions are a little different. One of them has our, the other one does not have our. But the concept is that He is our Father together. This is not just your Father. This isn't a person. I mean, yes, it's personal, but it's also corporate. This is a horizontal relationship that we get to have together. And as a group of people, we get to come and call on Him, Dad. Now, the weird word is Father, right? Because Jesus was kind of throwing a curveball at people when he was using that term, Father. This wasn't just a normal father language. This wasn't just, my Father who's in heaven. This word that he uses is the same cultural equivalent of daddy. That's what it is. Some of you know that already, so it's not a big, like, wow, and that's the other challenge in this sermon is it's not going to be like a big reveal. There's not going to be something I'm going to tell you today that you're going to say, wow, I never knew that. I'm going to write that one down. It's not going to happen. But I want to share with you realness today. Because I think this is so essential to our relationship with God. This is so critical to our personal development and our deep, close connection with the Father. And Satan doesn't want us to pray. He doesn't want us to do the our Father who art in heaven, right? So Jesus kind of starts with that concept, and he says, our first concept is that we got to go up first, right? And the thing that's bringing you down, the thing that's bringing you to your knees is not the thing that we start with. We start with Him as our focus. We go, our Father who art in heaven, your name is holy. Because when we see who God is, I love the genius of this. We see who we are. Do you get that? Do you understand that's why we start with our Father who art in heaven? Hallowed be thy name. Hallowed means like your name is holy. Everything that you touch is holy. And maybe the reason this is so personal is because I've gotten really good at praying. And I don't mean like I bring my personal junk to Jesus, because that's the part that I'm not real good at yet. In fact, I'm still learning those lessons. But to pray for you, to pray for this church, to pray for the kingdom, ooh, I love praying. I love those prayers. I love saying that you are holy, God, that everything you touch is holy. So touch this thing now. I love it when God flexes his muscles. I've said that before. I love it when his right arm shows off. And I've prayed that prayer before. God, just flex here, would you? Would you just demonstrate who you are? And I want to just share with you some of these, here are some personal things that I've been praying about and praying for, and some of them don't even know that I'm bringing this up. Some of them do. Some of them don't know I'm bringing it in the sermon. They thought it was going to be in the prayer cards, in the prayer list in the back. But this Thursday, I went to lunch with a friend of mine, and we were sitting at the table, and our server comes over, and she uses some pretty coarse language, which is kind of fun. I like people like that just because I like hanging out with them, and they have no idea what I do. They see me and they think I'm like a construction worker, so they have no clue that I'm a pastor, right? And so when that conversation comes up, it's always kind of fun, and I kind of keep them on the hook a little while. So I was going to lunch with somebody on Thursday, and this gal, she comes up and she goes, she's like, I think she was 7 months pregnant. She was pretty big, and not like fat, but just big. And that's always kind of an awkward one. And I was like, hey, you look like you got a bun in the oven, right? And she's like, yeah, I do. And I'm so glad you didn't say it the other way around. And I said, oh yeah, how's that? Well, some guys don't even know if I'm pregnant. And I'm like, really? How are you think I'm just this fat? Is what she said. I was like, yeah, that got really weird and really awkward, and she was using some weird language in the conversation. And what I love to do, and what I love to surprise them with, her name's Kayla, what I found out just in a small interaction, just by taking a little bit of time and saying, hey, congratulations. Is this your first child? Yeah, it's my first one. Do you have a name yet? No, I don't have a name. Do you know the gender? Yeah, she's a girl. So you're just calling her baby Kayla right now? Yeah. I said, so what's going on in life? Like, I didn't see a wedding ring. Just observe people, right? Just kind of find out where they're at. And she said, yeah, the baby daddy, he left me, shortly after I was pregnant. He jumped ship, and he said it was too much responsibility. I haven't heard hide nor hair. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm living with mom and dad. Mom and dad are giving me tough love. You guys know the gamut. So she takes her order. She comes back, and as she delivers the food, my buddy that I'm sitting with, he sees this all the time. He knows what's happening. And I said, hey, Kayla, I'm going to pray for our food, but I want to pray for you. Is there something I can pray for you about? This is after she dropped a couple of Effenheimers. I mean, it was good stuff, guys. I'm not kidding you. She was worldly. She was from the world. If you don't know those people, you're living in a bubble, and that's wrong, all right? We're not called to live in holy huddles. We're called to be out. And so she's just being a normal person and had a great connection. I got to be a little bit of Jesus to her. And when I asked her how I could pray for her, she just said, yeah, just pray for my baby. Yeah. So I put my hand on her. This is awkward if you've not been a part of this. This is why I like Brent so much, because he and I do the same thing. Didn't know he did it. I didn't borrow it from him, and he didn't borrow it from me. It's just something we both do. Put my arm on the shoulder and I just start praying for her. Probably doesn't, I don't know the last time somebody prayed for her. But somebody did that day. So that's one. Here's another one. Man, I haven't even started the sermon. I'm so sorry. But, so server, Hazel Anderson. Hazel is having surgery October 8th. And she's going, there you are, Hazel. She called me this week. Oh, going to the surgeon. You're going to the surgeon on October 8th so that you might find out what's going on with your spine and your neck. And so we're going to pray for Hazel. She's on the prayer list. So I'm lifting her name at the throne. Craig's sister. Craig's been asking me to pray for his sister Beth for a while. Beth has cancer. Not only are we praying for something physically, but we're also praying for some stuff spiritually. She has cancer in the liver. They found a spot in her lung. I'm praying for her. She gets test results on October 10th, if you want to put Beth down on the list. I was praying for Greg all week. Greg lost his mom this week, and that was just a tough battle. So I've been praying for Greg. But one guy I've been praying for is Dennis. And some of you guys know this. Some of you have heard rumors, and you're wondering, why didn't I hear some of this beforehand? And it's because Dennis and Sherry, they're attenders, they're members of our church. We love them, we care for them. Sherry's kind of shy, right? And some of you are shy. And so when you share a prayer request for me, sometimes we go, okay, is this a public thing? Do you want prayer like in front of everybody? Do you want this just kind of leadership stuff? And right now it was just, I don't want to be in front of everybody. I don't want that. That scares me. Okay, fine. So we're just praying for Sherry, right? She had surgery this last week. She had surgery on Friday. And at 5:15 p.m., about halfway through the surgery, I got an update. I just sent it over to the elders. Hey, she's halfway through. Just keep praying. So around 5:15, I get this text. Hey, I just spoke with the surgeon. She's in recovery room now. We'll be there for an hour or more, and then she's going to be transferred to another room. Surgery went very well. Big thumbs up icon. More after I get something to eat. You're absolutely going to love this. I said, anticipation. So then he sends back this big long text at 7 o'clock. I finished eating, and I'm now waiting for her to be brought back to me from the recovery room. When I spoke to the surgeon, and after the surgery, he said it all went very well. It's possible she might even be released tomorrow. If not tomorrow, probably Sunday. He did find a small, unexpected area of cancer in the lymph node area near her cheekbone, which he did remove. Now for the good news. No cancer was found in her cheekbone, so she did not need to remove any part of it. He had no idea why it disappeared. Number 2, the size of the tumor located near her upper left jawbone had reduced in size, and it was about the size of a $50, but he found that it had shrunk by 50%, and he doesn't know why. The surgeon also found that the size of the tumor near her cheekbone that had reduced by size, and I quote, substantially more than 50%, and he couldn't explain that either. And then he said, how cool is that? The surgeon tried to explain how these things could happen. By saving her immune system, must have gone into high gear. He then said it doesn't happen like this normally, but he had no idea how else it could have happened. My sister Terry and I said it was prayer. I don't think he was buying it. Thanks to all who've been praying. Sherry still has a long way to go, but things are looking better than ever before. God is showing his power once again, confusing the experts. Keep praying. There's still a long way to go. Keep praying. Still a long way to go. I've recommended to people that they have their Lieutenant Dan moment if they're frustrated with life. I've recommended, you've seen the scene, right, with Forrest Gump and Lieutenant Dan's on the mast. He's like, is this the best you've got? Right? And if you look at that statement from just a prayer perspective, this is the rawest, most real prayer you'll ever see in life. He's even cussing at God. But Lieutenant Dan found peace. Now, I'm not suggesting that Lieutenant Dan become a format and a template for a prayer life, right? There are times where you need to just let it go, let her buck is what I say. Because guess what? He knows what's going on inside anyway, right? He knows what's happening. You just need to let her go because it's the thing that's holding you back from a relationship that's deeper with God. So here, I want to just be kind of upfront and share some of my obstacles in my own personal prayer life. There's 3 reasons why I kind of have this, like, I do well with Jesus, you're holy, and pray for people, and I want your kingdom to come. But on a personal level, when I really have things going on in my personal life as a pastor, that's harder. I don't want to give those things to God. And I've kind of been analyzing that the last month or so, wondering why that is. And here's what I've come up with. These are just my reasons. You can come up with your own. The information that we passed out actually talk about other obstacles that might identify more with you. These are my obstacles. Number 1, I don't want to need Jesus. I don't want to need God. Right? Second reason, I don't want to bother him. And then ultimately, a third reason, I'm not sure he's going to do anything about it. And as you analyze that, there's one common denominator. You know what it is? Me. I'm the common denominator. I'm the biggest obstacle with my prayer life of Jesus. That's it. Because I don't want to need him. I want to be able to do this thing called life on my own. Because if I need him, that shows that I'm weak. That shows that I'm not strong enough. That shows that I can't do it. Basically, it's pride. It's dependency. I don't want to depend on Jesus. But every one of us in this room, including me, are not immune to the light switch happening. To that one phone call, that one accident, that one diagnosis, that one notification where your whole life is wrecked. Every one of us are there. And the second one, I don't want to bother him. I mean, there's this real part of me that just kind of says, I don't want to annoy him. You know why I think that is? I think some of us kind of identify with that, right? Because Jesus has all these other bigger issues that he's got to take care of. All the world's problems. I mean, you got global warming, you got nuclear wars. Why do I want to bother him with my small potato stuff? Why do I want to bother him about, like my sink being broken down? Or, by the way, 2 weeks ago when all of this was kind of coming down, I had like 4 major issues that just drove me to my knees. I can't talk about those issues. But those issues, man, they would mortify some of you. Some of you would just go, oh my goodness. And I was there. And as I was going through that week, you know what happened? I walked from my house to the church, and I look over to my truck, and you know what I see? My gas tank fell off my truck. And I'm like, of course it did. Why would that not happen? Right? I'm looking for the mast to climb because I'm going, Jesus, what's going on? Some of you I know are there. And at the same time, I mean, like, is he really going to worry about my fuel tank falling off my truck? Probably not. Is he going to worry about those other 4 big things that are just mountains that I can't climb myself, that I don't know what to do? Probably not a big deal to him, right? But it is to me. So I don't want to bother him with those things. And this actually kind of connects, anytime, like for me, like, oh man, I tell you what, I know I'm a little scatterbrained, but just stay with me for a second. What I found is that the way I was connecting with God is the way I'm connecting with my family. And there was like this light bulb that hit. Because I want my wife desperately to share with me what's going on. Like when I come home from work, or when I come home, I've had some long hours this last month or two. And as I've come home, I just want her to be able to unpack with me. Hey, what's going on? Are you doing okay? How are the kids? But she doesn't want to bother me with her little things like the sink being plugged. Because she says, and I quote, you've got all these other things you're dealing with. You have all the problems with the church and all the leadership stuff. And when I say problems, every church has problems. And it's not like problematic. It's just people have pain, right? That's what she's referring to. And she doesn't want to take away from you, which is a wonderful spirit of service. She doesn't want my mind to be distracted from serving you. But she struggles with sharing me sometimes, right? Because I'm hers and I'm not yours, right? Does that make sense to everybody? And when I stumbled in this about a year ago, I shared with her, I said, Mandy, now some of you are not going to get this reference because you don't play cards and you think it's from the devil. Actually, I disagree with you. We play spades a lot at our house, right? And so we have a trump card. And if you know anything about spades, the 2 of spades is a trump card for every other suit. I told Mandy, and this was a stroke of genius. Some of you guys are going to use this for Valentine's Day next year, okay? I know it is. I told Mandy, I said, listen, you're my 2 of spades to everyone else's ace of diamonds. I don't care what it is that you're dealing with. You're my 2 of spades, hon. I don't care what's going on in life. I want you to bring it to me. So I've been telling her that for the last year, right? And then 2 weeks ago, when these things just start to cripple me, and I've got 4 major things just piling on, and I'm just going, oh my goodness, I can't do this, God. It's almost like I heard Jesus say, hey, where's your 2 of spades, buddy? Whew. Because if I think I don't want to bother him, what that's telling myself is that he doesn't care for me. That he doesn't have time for me. Which is that what the Bible says? Not at all. The Bible says he's crazy about me. That he's nuts about you. That he wants to hear you. I think there's going to be this storehouse of unused gifts that we just haven't asked because we don't want to bother him. We don't want to trouble him. And I think what it echoes back to is a relationship maybe with Dad. Dads, listen to me. When we communicate, directly or indirectly in our homes, that we don't have time for our family, our wives or our children, basically what we're saying to them is, listen to what I say, do what I say, and don't bother me anymore because I don't have time for this. Now, you take that same concept and look at what you're seeing. It's my relationship with God. Do you realize, dads, that you are you are the most powerful metaphor for who God is in your children's life? That's what's going on. So if you create a home where you welcome conversation, where you welcome dialogue, where you invest in your children, invest in your wives, and listen, and some of you are like, hey, I'm not married. Okay, yeah, I know you're not, Craig. Listen to me. Friends, co-workers, extensions of family, if you take time, it doesn't matter if you're married or not, with people around you, you represent what God does for us. Because ultimately, this isn't true that I don't want to bother him. Like, he wants me to bother him. He talks about that in Luke 11, the persistent widow. You can go back and look at it. He wants you to knock on his door. He wants you to frustrate him. You're not going to be able to. He wants you to try to find the line, though. And then ultimately, the last one is, this is probably more real, what's going on. I'm not sure he's going to do anything about those issues. That's a trust issue. So one's about dependency, one's about his love for me, one's about dependency. Or one's about trust. Because now, if I don't bring this thing to him, you know what happens in my mind? I play a psychological game. Well, I know you already know about this issue, right, Jesus? So if I don't bring it to you and then you satisfy it, man, I can high five and I can say, wow, look at how Jesus, flexed his muscle. But the problem is, if I bring it to Jesus and then he doesn't answer my request, now all of a sudden I'm going to question, does Jesus love me? That's the problem. Am I alone in this? See, I don't think I am. I think all of us are here. So those are kind of my obstacles. And I think part of this is that I don't have a very good, healthy fear of who God is. Because God absolutely is nuts about me, but he is still God of the cosmos. There have been a couple of times, even recently, where I have just been scared out of my mind because of the physical nature or physical things around me. One of those was the Boundary Waters trip that I shared 2-3 weeks ago. I know some of you have been in those moments. I had an accident when I was 17 years old. Thought I was going to die. I mean, that moment scared the bejesus out of me, right? I was like, woo! I was in that freeze mode of flight, freeze, and flight. Okay? I had no idea what to do. And if the physical world can do that to me, how much more can the God Almighty who created all this do that to me? And sometimes I think we kind of have this too much of a cavalier attitude and respect, or lack of respect for who God is. And so you can kind of categorize all of this with, I have kind of an unhealthy fear of who God is. But realistically, if I just stop and realize who I've been invited to have communion with, who I've been invited to have dialogue with, man, my prayer life changes. And I think, again, that's why Jesus said, our Father, who art in heaven. His perspective is better than our perspective. Hallowed be thy name. Your will be done. See, Jesus knows what's going on in your world. If he is truly in heaven, he has a better perspective than you. Tim Keller says it this way, and I think it's such a great quote. He said, and I quote, if God would answer all of our prayers the way that we would, exactly like we would, if we had all the information he did. Okay, let me say it again. God answers all of our prayers exactly like we would answer our own prayers if we had all the information that he does. Sometimes we call on this guy that has, we call on the Father who has a heavenly perspective, who has a top-down perspective. He sees the board of your life. He sees what's going on. He sees the twists and the turns, and he's going to say no to some things that you're requesting, that you can't see possibly. And so if we had that perspective, of course we would not answer the requests that we had. Right? Garth Brooks kind of said unanswered prayers, right? That's kind of where the idea is. It's that concept where I'm going to trust that God knows best for my life because he has all the information in my life. He knows all of eternity. I have a very limited perspective, a very limited vantage, so I can't possibly know what's the best thing in this situation for me. When I say, Jesus, I need a job. Jesus, I need some more finances. Jesus, I need you to fix this health concern. I need you to fix this relationship. And he goes, you don't want that. Because if you had that, that's going to lead to this, and that's going to lead to this. That's the wrong thing for you. But we don't have that perspective. So Jesus says, begin your prayers with him. And I think by beginning our prayer time with him as our focus, we actually get to take kind of the attention off of us, which is a beautiful gift that he gives us. And then the very reason that actually brought us to our knees kind of dissipates. And maybe that's immediately, maybe that's gradually, but eventually what happens is our perspectives change. You see, last week what I discovered was, and I already shared this, the more intimate I became with God, with those crippling things that brought me to my knees, that I literally, I do the, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come on earth as much as it is in heaven. Give me today, Lord, my daily bread. I was very vague in my prayer life up until a couple of weeks ago. And then what happened, because of the crippling nature of my situations, you know what I did? I threw all that out the window and I said, Jesus, I need you to do something about this. And I became very specific. I gave him what it was that was crippling me. I want you to speak to this situation. I don't know what you want to do. Give me faith to trust you in this, but I need you to speak to this situation. I named that situation before the throne. And then I named the second one. And then I named the third one. Then I named the fourth one. And I saw God start to move. And that's really cool timing. But outside of that, the other thing was that the more intimate I became with God, I started to see something else. I started to see the more intimate I was with my family. Because as I was willing to give this to Jesus, I actually, we went to Goldie's, Evan and Grace and I, on the way Monday night, 2 weeks ago. And this is the day that everything started kind of unraveling. And I asked the kids, I said, hey, what's on your mind today? No, Evan, nothing. Okay, well, that's expected. All right, Gracie was like, I'm thinking about, some theory that's above mine. That's expected too. And so then I said, and they actually volleyed it back, and they said, well, Dad, what are you thinking? And I said, I'm thinking how I don't pray like I want to. And they said, what do you mean? And I said, well, and I didn't tell them the things either, but I said, I've got just some major stuff that I don't do a very good job at unloading on God. And so I'm going to start making a commitment that I'm going to start praying. I'm going to start naming these sink items, the clogged sink items. I'm going to start naming those with Jesus. And I invited them to do that. And I said, the other thing I want to do is I want to pray with you guys more often too. And maybe that's because of the series and all that stuff, but I think it's more than that. I think that was even a game because I thought, well, am I just doing it because of the series? I don't want to do that because that's kind of cheap. No, forget all that. Just pray with your kids. So I started praying with my kids more. And then Mandy and I were not doing well that week. We were kind of doing some of this like most married couples do. And about Thursday, I came over and I said, you know the two of spade thing? She said, yeah. I said, I got it. I get it. Because I do the same thing with God. And so if I'm expecting you to do something in my relationship with you, and I'm not doing that very same thing with God, then I'm actually hypocritical. So I'm going to change. I'm going to start giving some of my stuff to God. Some of my big stuff. Some of my little stuff even. I'm just going to say, Jesus, please, and just lay it at his feet. And I'm not going to be all super holy about it. It's not going to be real beautiful rhetoric. It's going to be very raw rhetoric. And I said, I want to be able to pray with you too. Here's kind of the crazy thing. Statistically, do you realize 4% of couples in church who consider themselves to be believers state that they pray regularly together as a couple through the year? 4%. Now, I heard another statistic that was done by Gallup poll, and this was remarkable. There was actually a couple of other sources that cited the statistic that I thought were pretty decent, but here's what it said. It said, most of us know that 40 to 50% of couples who get married today are going to end in divorce, right? How many of you have kind of heard that concept? It's a loose percentage, right? We know that. And then that's across the board. That's for people who don't believe in Jesus and people who do believe Jesus rose again from the dead. So you have two camps, but the statistics remain the same. And then they did another kind of poll, and they wanted to find out for the couples who actually prayed together regularly. All right, so this was a one time a week. They prayed regularly. They actually held each other's hands. They prayed regularly. The husband initiated, the wife initiated. They said, let's just bring this to Jesus. For those couples, you ready for this stat? It blows my mind still. Less than 1% of those couples who pray regularly together actually ended in divorce. You know, the most powerful thing you can do as a couple is pray. The most powerful thing you could do as an individual is pray. Because it brings you both together. God has given us a beautiful gift called intimacy. And sometimes we confuse that intimacy and we think that it's only specific to the physical nature, but it's not. There's also an emotional intimacy. There's sexual intimacies, there's physical intimacies, there's emotional intimacies, there's spiritual intimacies. Here's the application. The intimacy of our prayer life actually inspires the influence and impacts of our prayers, right? The more intimate you are with Jesus, the more impact and influence you'll actually have as a person and as a couple. You want the thing that's going to save your marriage if your marriage is in trouble? Why don't you start praying together? It's not more sex. It's not better budgets. It's more intimacy with God. It's praying together as a couple. Husbands, I know I'm with you here. I know some of you are not praying with your wives. It's awkward. You don't know how to pray. I heard a story. Gary actually told me this, and asked him the details of it later. There was a man sitting in a nursing home, and a preacher came by and talked to him about prayer, and he said, yeah, I struggle with the prayer life because he's invisible. And so one preacher actually told this guy, why don't you put a rocking chair in your room and just pretend like you're speaking to Jesus, like he's right there with you. And months had gone by, and he'd check in with him, and the guy said, yeah, that changed my prayer life. Like I don't even think about he's not here because the chair's empty, and I get to talk to my friend. And his prayer life just dramatically changed. His daughter called the preacher and said, I have some information for you. Dad passed away last night. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. How did he pass? Well, he had a heart attack, we think, but what was weird, not necessarily how he passed, but where he passed. What do you mean? Well, his head was in the rocking chair. Jesus wants us to come to him. He wants you as a couple to come to him. And the more intimate we are in our prayer time, the more influence and impact you're actually going to make in life. And I wonder sometimes why we don't do this. Why we don't pray like we should. Why parents have stopped praying with their kids. Is it just because they got older and they got awkward? And maybe it's because the kids started going to bed later than you did, right? Maybe that's why you stopped praying with your kids. Maybe you ought to have your kids tuck you in and pray for you one night. Let's just try that once, all right? We need to go back to praying together. Because it draws us closer. It's more intimate. It will heal what's going on in your life. Don't hold up in a hole and put your head down and just trust that he's going to do something without asking him to do it. Give it over to him. Pray. But start with him. And I think when we do this, it bleeds into every relationship that we have. So you ready? Guys, please hear me. I want you to list this down. These are some of the things I pray for my wife about. You ready? I don't pray that she learns how to not have 10,000 words in a day. All right? That's not helpful. It is, but that's not what I'm praying for. So men, that's not on the prayer list. Here's what I pray for with my wife. I pray that she would chase me like I chased Jesus. That's a good one. Because it also gives me accountability. How am I chasing Jesus? I pray that God would give her mission. God would give her identity. That's something more than just my wife or my children's mother. Pray for her identity. Be her number one champion. Be her number one support. Pray for her. Pray for her. Pray that Satan doesn't have his way with her. Ladies, don't just pray that your husband get his rear end off the couch. Pray something better. Pray that he would become the warrior that God wanted him to be when he designed him to be. Pray that your husband would have wisdom. Man, that one rocks your world because God doesn't give you wisdom automatically. You know what he gives you? He gives you problems that make you wise. It's kind of like praying for patience and expecting patience, right? That's not what happens, right? He gives you people like Joe in your life. That's what happened with us. We prayed for patience one time, and Mandy was put on bed rest for 7 weeks. That was the end of the patience prayer. We didn't do that anymore, okay? So God doesn't give you patience. He gives you things that make you patient. He doesn't give you wisdom. He gives you things that make you wise. Pray that your wife would become wise. Pray that she would be vulnerable with him and with you. Pray for your kids. Pray for your kids. Pray that they would be spiritually minded, that they would have minds that are guarded, that they would not be affected by the world around them. They would learn identity. Listen, kids, pray for your parents. They're not going to be perfect. They're going to make some boneheaded decisions. Pray for your parents, that they would be godly men and women. And do me a favor, get off the Xbox, would you? This is just stupid, all right? Parents, don't let them get on the Xbox. Spend some time with each other, right? Just spend some time praying with each other. Here, individuals, I'm not leaving you out. If you're single and you're going, okay, what about me? Okay, some of you are single because of different things. Some of you are called to singleness, and maybe it's just situationally. You've never had an opportunity to be in a relationship. Some of you are actually stalled in a relationship. You want to be in a relationship, but you're not there yet. Some of you actually are widowed, and so you've lost your partner, you've lost your spouse. And some of you are single because of divorce. And so there's multiple different layers to this singleness concept, right? Each one of you are in a unique companionship with someone else, scripturally. You get to join like Jesus joined. That's why I want you to read Luke. And just a little exercise. Every time you go through Luke, underline or highlight the phrase, he went off by himself to pray. How often did Jesus do that? You're in a great companionship with someone else, okay, with Jesus. But more than that, you're not distracted by all of the kitchen sink things. You get to actually invest in other people. So you're not, even though you might not be married, you're not alone. You still have a greater community called the church, which we get to be a partnership with. So pray that you would be just like Jesus in this world and make impact. Okay? I want every one of you guys, ushers, Randy, are you organized and ready for this? I want every one of you guys to pray, commit to praying 7 times a week. I want you to commit as a home or as a group, as a tribe, whatever your tribe is, to commit to praying 5 times a week. And I also want you to commit to praying 2 times a week with your spouse or a Jonathan David sort of relationship. Whoever your best friend is, whoever your accountability partner is if you're not married, whoever that person is that you can lean on in any time, I want you to set aside time just to pray. Now, I want everyone in the room to get one of these cards. What it is, it's a commitment card. That's all it is. Now, I'm not going to hold you to it. I'm not going to knock on your door and say, hey, are you praying every day? Here's what I stumbled into with my daughter like a couple of weeks ago. I said, goals. Madison, do you remember? Are you in here? Okay, goals without dates are only dreams, is what it just kind of fell out of my mouth. And I was like, wow, that's really good. Goals without dates are only dreams. And some of us are only dreaming that our world will be different. We don't actually have a goal that our world's going to be different. And the reason that we don't is because we haven't put it down, we haven't made a plan, we haven't been intentional about our life, and we haven't said we're going to do this thing. So this commitment card is for you to just really say, yeah, I'm in. And then for those of you who are in, we do have some wrist bracelets outside. They're in a basket. It says 752. It's just a great, simple reminder. It's not like really gaudy and it's not really girly. So it's kind of a cool little balance, all right? So if you would like to have one of those are yours. And if we run out, we'll get some more, okay? But it's just a way for you to have a visual reminder of your commitment that you're making right now, okay? So here's the very last thing I want to tell you. Chad, can you run to my last slide? It's this. Anytime that we start with him in our prayer time, you know what happens? It takes the focus off of our problems. But what I'm learning is if I start with my problems with God, I'm taking the focus off of him. And so for us, what we're trying to help you do with this prayer initiative is teach you how to pray. So the very first thing out of the gate is we start our prayer time with who he is. Because when we understand who he is, we kind of get a glimpse of who we are. So as we're closing out today, I'm going to invite you, if you didn't get a chance to, if you thought it was maybe awkward to go right on the board, that's cool. Come do it after service is over. Just be intimate with it. Just proclaim who Jesus is or who God is. And help us as a church be able to champion these things together. God, I thank you so much that you've given us a connection, that you've given us a call to come back to you, just to be raw and real and open with you. Lord, I pray that we would be deeper. I pray that we'd be more real with you, that we would stop playing patty cake with this thing that we call faith, that you would drive us to our knees. In Christ's name, amen.